Resuming debate, the honourable member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And to answer the member's comment about pardons versus expungements, expungements can be used and should be used when there is a historical injustice in how a criminal record was obtained. You can use pardons for any criminal record, but expungements are what we need for those criminal records that came about because of a historical injustice, and I'll talk about that in my speech here. And I'd first like to again thank the member from Victoria for bringing this important bill forward. I think it's something that Canadians are looking forward to, Canadians want, and I think he is stepping into the breach where the government has failed to go. And even though they had plenty of time to get ready for this, we've been planning on this, you know, the legalization of marijuana for many years. And I can start off by saying, and this is unlike, it's obviously true in many ridings, you know, there's a lot of people in my riding that use cannabis, that used cannabis before it became legal. You know, we all carry out kind of unofficial polling when we go door to door, and one of the things you notice when you go door to door in my riding is how many people use cannabis. It's quite a popular thing in my riding. You know, it's not everybody that's doing it, but you notice how many people do it, and it's not just people of color, Indigenous people. It's everyone. It's business people, but it's the whole point of this bill, this expungement, is that in the past, the arrests for simple possession of marijuana have been disproportionately handed out to people, marginalized Canadians, young Canadians, Black Canadians, Indigenous Canadians. These are the people that have suffered by far the most for this, and this is one of the reasons that expungement is much more appropriate than a simple pardon. So, as other people have said, many people in Canada have a criminal record simply because they were found in possession of marijuana, something that we now say is completely fine, is completely legal, shouldn't have happened before. You know, let's get on with it. 500,000 Canadians, Madam Speaker, and some people suggest that it might be as high as over 900,000 Canadians. This is not something that is relegated to some dark, you know, criminal backwaters of Canada. This is the bulk of Canadian society. And it leaves them with a criminal record. They can't cross the border. They have difficult finding work in many cases. They can't even volunteer to work. You know, a lot of times when you want to coach a soccer team for your kid's school, they demand a criminal record check. Yeah. You can't do that. And so it really affects the lives of Canadians that we now say have really done nothing wrong. And as I said, we've had a lot of time leading up to this. The government had a lot of time to prepare its legislation. Other jurisdictions, California, Delaware, Vermont, now and I think North Dakota's moving in this direction. They're all bringing in expungement provisions into their legalization legislation. But this government didn't. They didn't, you know, we've been pressing them to have something like this since we began sitting in this parliament. And now they say, well, maybe next year they'll bring in legislation that it'll make it easier for people to apply for a pardon. But I just want to go back to this point about, you know, it's really marginalized Canadians that have been hit hard, and that's why expungement is the way to go. Yep. And as other people said, you know, if you're Black in Regina, or sorry, if you're Indigenous in Regina, you're 9 times more likely to be arrested on simple possession. 7 times more likely in Vancouver. If you're Black in Halifax, you're 5 times more likely to be arrested, 3 times more likely in Toronto. So these simple possession arrests disproportionately affect people of color, Indigenous people, young people. And, you know, I can quote back members of the government, what they feel on this. You know, The Prime Minister said people from minority communities, marginalized communities without economic resources are not going to have that kind of option to go through and clear their name in the justice system. That's one of the fundamental unfairnesses of this current system that affects different communities in a different way. That's the Prime Minister. Minister of Border Security says the failed system of criminal prohibition that has resulted in the criminalization of hundreds of thousands of Canadians and contributed to an unjust disparity and impact on vulnerable communities. The Minister of Public Safety says the law as it stands today has been an abject failure. The MP from Hull-Aylmer, we do know that Black Canadians have been disproportionately charged with and are imprisoned for possessions of small amounts of cannabis. So, there's, much of the cabinet admitting that this is what has been going on, and this can only be justly dealt with through an expungement, a simple expungement of all those criminal records so these people can get on with their lives and get work. Cross the border. In Toronto, 15% of people on social welfare says that a need for record suspension is a key barrier to getting work. We all want those people to work and be, take part in this economy, this society, but that's the barrier they're facing, and only an expungement would help that. I see I don't have much time left, so I would say that, as I say, the government's going to bring in, they say they're going to bring in pardons. Right now that I'm running out of time, I'll just say, Madam Speaker, that...
I was going to say to the members, he's going to have 3 minutes left the next time that this is before the House, so he has about 30 seconds if he would like to wrap something up in 30 seconds, and then he would still have...
the member from Victoria for bringing this forward, and I hope that everyone here supports this and we can send it to committee for further study.